right, welcome back to Worst Seats in the House. Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta. I'm coming from New York City. Anthony's coming from Bally Sports North Studios in Minneapolis. And Eastern Conference Finals start tonight. Western Conference Finals start tomorrow. Anthony, do you know who the actor F. Murray Abraham is?
No.
So F. Murray Abraham, you look him up. You will know who he is. He was the grandfather in White Lotus, the last White Lotus in Sicily.
Okay.
He was sitting at my table last night in New York City for dinner. Went to a great Italian restaurant in Greenwich Village called Rosemary's, right up your alley. Not old school Italian like we would go with Lou Nanni when we've been here in New York City or when we go out to Little Italy. This is a trendy Greenwich Village type Italian restaurant. But this actor was sitting next to me, super nice guy, like 85 years old. I was reading up about him yesterday. It was Amadeus. I mean, he's been in everything.
Yeah, when I see his picture, I recognize him.
Yeah, super nice guy. But I was reading up on him last night. Lost his wife of 60 years 2 years ago, and he was sitting alone. Couldn't have been sweeter. Really cool guy. And I told him, I'm like, I loved you in Curb Your Enthusiasm. So that's my standard anytime I meet an actor because most have been in that. In a Curb episode at some point.
Cameo somewhere along the lines.
Yeah, he was in one of I think the Facua episodes. So Anthony, Eastern.
Right. He was in the Facua. That sequence. That's right. We never really talked about that after how much we both loved that show. We never talked about the way this last season ended.
Don't tell me. Because I'm not kidding you. I have not watched this last season. So I watched like the first 2 episodes, and I actually didn't love it. And so I just figured instead of going one by one, I'd just binge watch it at some point. I just haven't had time yet. Did you like it? Should I like it? Will I like it?
I thought it wasn't as good as a couple of the recent seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And the finale itself was kind of what you'd expect. I'll just say that.
Okay. Yeah, I probably very much like Seinfeld, like that one of those where everybody sort of returns. I'm looking forward to watching it.
I didn't realize that I was just reading recently that maybe at the time I just wasn't aware that Larry David returned to Seinfeld only to write the finale. Like I didn't realize that he had been away for I don't remember what it was, 3 seasons or something like that, and had been totally removed from it, but came back just for the finale.
Yeah. And I absolutely love the finale. I know some people didn't. One of the funniest seasons of Curb is I think season 6 where they do the Seinfeld reunion, and he gets them all together. And one of the funniest scenes is when Jason Alexander and him are meeting, and he goes, "This will make up the finale." I love it. And he's, what do you mean make up for the finale? Like he gets all offended and all that stuff. And
I just got some on one of the social media platforms. I had a link pop up to, I think maybe it was This Day, however many years ago, was the finale of Cheers. And it reminded me of how much I loved that finale, how perfect the ending of that finale was. Do you remember the conclusion where Norm comes in and tells him that I knew you'd come back because Sam had left the bar, and he comes back and says, you never leave that one true love. And Sam's sitting in the empty bar by himself, and he just says, I'm the luckiest SOB on the planet. And a guy comes and knocks at the door, and he just says, sorry, we're closed, and walks down the hallway.
Yeah.
And it reminded me of just how terrific that ending was. I loved the finale of MASH where the helicopter flies away and Hawkeye's left BJ the goodbye message in stones from up above. Just there were some of those great shows had such perfect endings. And in some ways, when you look at the Seinfeld finale, the fact that it was imperfect and maybe even subpar and is probably perfect for the show because it was a
show about nothing.
It was a nothing finale. It was just it just didn't have that moment, that hook.
Yeah,
you'll never forget because there was nothing to it.
Yeah, other than the last scene where they're in jail cell and they revert to, you had to be a Seinfeld lover to know it. They revert to the opening scene of the original pilot, about the button there or something like that. Anthony, really excited. We got Matt Sells on. Thanks to Aaron Sickman, the Wild's director of public relations forever, media relations since day one. He's been with the Wild. Thanks for Aaron Sickman for setting us up. But Matt Sells, their longtime. He started as director of analytics. Then last year he became their vice president of hockey strategy. And now the next promotion for him is assistant general manager. He's one of 3 assistant general managers that Bill Guerin named last week with Michael Murray and Chris Kelleher. So we'll talk to Matt about how he got his start in his career, because I'm always fascinated by how everybody has a different path to get to the top, and he certainly has one. I started with Hockey Canada as a video coach and has worked his way up, obviously, into the National Hockey League and things like that. We'll talk to him about that. We'll talk to him about how his job changed this year when they lost Chris O'Hearn to what it now will transfer into, where he's going to be doing contract negotiations. And we'll talk to him a little bit about analytics. So really looking forward about that. But Anthony, this first segment, let's start right here in New York City, where I am at tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m. back where you are. The New York Rangers face the Florida Panthers. And the really cool part about both these conference finals, Anthony, is that if you had to pick arguably the 4 best teams in the league, you'd probably pick these 4 teams. So let's be honest. I mean, if you prorate Edmonton's season after Jay Woodcroft got fired, they were amongst the best team in the league. They absolutely took off after him. You obviously have the President's Trophy winners here in New York City. You have the Florida Panthers, who I still think has been the best team in the Eastern Conference in all avenues, special teams, even strength, all that. And then the Dallas Stars, who just from start to finish really dominated the West.
I thought the best 8 were the final 8. With the potential exception of Vegas, and I'm talking about the playoff version of Vegas. I think they were so that I think there were 9 teams that were different from the rest, and the 8 that were in the second round, I thought it was one of the rare seasons where you could legitimately see any of the 8 winning it all. Where sometimes you'd say, okay, I could see this team upsetting that team. I could see this team winning this series, but probably not winning 4 series in a row. Where I thought any of those 8, and I'll throw Vegas in there because as we talked at the start of the playoffs, I felt like whoever won that Dallas-Vegas series was a legit candidate to win the West. In fact, that was my pick, was whoever won that series would win the West. I still don't think Edmonton is one of the best 4 teams in the NHL. I just don't. And I think Vancouver, if healthy, was better than them. If you put Brock Besser in the Game 7 lineup, if you put Thatcher Demko in goal in that series, I think Vancouver wins that series. As it was, 3-1. Now, Edmonton was the better team in Game 7, but I felt like I thought Vancouver was better. I also think Colorado, when healthy, might have been better than Edmonton. So don't get me wrong. They deserved to be there. They were the better team in Game 7 of that series. They were all over Vancouver that night. I think the other 3 are 3 that at the start of the playoffs, it was hard to imagine a conference final that didn't include the Rangers, the Panthers, and the Stars. And we'll see. Edmonton could beat Dallas. There's no question. I picked Dallas, but it wouldn't be a shock to anybody if Edmonton won that series.
I still think it would be very shocking. I think Dallas is by far the superior team. I'm not as bullish on Vancouver.
But that's my point, is that when you said the best 4, I think Edmonton's the outlier. I think the other 3
I hear you.
Are the better 3.
Yeah. But I thought watching a lot of that series with Edmonton and Vancouver, even in the games they won, they were getting severely outchanced, outplayed. There just seemed to be I felt they were almost out of gas. And obviously,
there were some, but I will say, like Game 5 in Vancouver, where you felt like Edmonton had tied the series with a Game 4 win at home. You kind of felt like, okay, maybe. Because they had really outplayed Vancouver in Game 4. And you thought maybe this is where Edmonton takes control of this series. They look like the faster team, the higher chance. And then Vancouver just pounded them that night. Edmonton had nothing. Now, Game 6 back in Edmonton was the reverse, and the Oilers were all over them. And I think you could tell Vancouver, I think you're right. I think they were running out of gas a little bit. I think they had ridden a goaltender that was way beyond his way beyond where anybody ever would have imagined he'd be at this point in the season. And then when you took away one of their best, Brock Besser had been one of their best players in the playoffs.
No doubt.
And I think you could almost feel it in their roster. We've seen that sometimes where it was almost like a team that knew they were going to have everything break right to win Game 7, probably have to win a 2-1 style game. And then you lose your best scorer in the postseason, and then you fall behind early in the game. You could just tell they didn't have enough to come from behind. Credit to them, they still made it 3-2 and got it to, with a pulled goaltender, a couple of good looks in the final minute or so. But Edmonton was the better team in that game, and probably over the 7 games they deserved to win.
Yeah, I would agree with you there, and we'll talk more about this Dallas and Edmonton series, maybe in our third segment actually, because Matt's going to be coming on in a little bit. Anthony, let's talk about the Eastern Conference Final here that starts Florida and the Rangers tonight. I've been covering Florida the last 2 rounds. I think very highly of them. I did cover games 3 and 4, the Ranger Capitals series. The Rangers, it's been an interesting playoff run for them because they've been the best team in terms of record, 8-2 in the league. But, I still don't feel like we've seen their best game. They're riding special teams, which is a huge part of the playoffs. But 5-on-5, Florida has been and is the better team. And I joked in The Athletic the other day, Anthony, their best bet for Florida to win this series is not only to stay disciplined and stay out of the box, it might be to stop drawing penalties because the Rangers are as dominant shorthanded, not just killing penalties, but my God, did they go. They have 4 shorthanded goals. They have something like 14 shorthanded grade A chances in the playoffs. Between the smartness of Adam Fox, but then the real good chemistry of guys like Trocheck and Kreider and some they use stars on their penalty kill. This is going to be a really fascinating series. It could really come down to in goal, Anthony. Bobrovsky, 8-3. He has a .237 goals against average, but his save percentage is just above 900. Where Shesterkin has a little higher goals against average, but his save percentage is at .923. He's been just spectacular.
If it comes down to those two, I'll take Shesterkin 7 days out of 7. I think Bobrovsky, he caught fire last year in the playoffs. He had a good season this year. The trust level that I feel in Igor Shesterkin is so much higher than it is in Sergei Bobrovsky. And I think Florida has to be the better team in front of him in order for them to win this series. I think this has to be a 65-35, 60-40 kind of game in terms of possession, high danger chances. And it could be Florida, the way Florida's been playing, there's no reason that they've
only been giving up 22, 23 shots a goal a game. Right. It was crazy. I mean, that's the one thing about Bobrovsky is he's had a very bizarre playoff, Anthony, where, he's not seeing any shot volume. And not only the shot volume, but he's going 14, 15 minutes a game without seeing even a shot. It's crazy.
Right. Now, I will say, I think Florida's path has been different. They caught a Tampa team that seemed to be running on fumes at the end of the season. They caught a Boston team that has been offensively challenged for the second half of the year and generated nothing. Part of that is certainly Florida and Florida's style of play and Florida's defensive structure. But I also think they didn't face Carolina, where they were going to face 40 shots a night. They haven't faced the Rangers for that matter. So I think we'll see. I think it'll be different, and I'll take the Rangers to win the series. I think this is the best team in the Eastern Conference, maybe the deepest team in the NHL. I think your point about their stars playing key roles is significant. We talked throughout this playoffs about when you get into these spots and you watch teams, players for 6-7 games in a row, you start to pick up and appreciate some little things in their games. And I think the Rangers' star players and the complete nature of their game is something that gets overlooked sometimes when you talk about guys like Kreider and Zibanejad. Zibanejad is so much more talented than I ever appreciated during the early part of his career when he was in Ottawa. And he's a highly skilled player that has great vision. He's a tremendous playmaker, but he also can score. His ability to shoot on the one-timer on the power play is right up there with the best in the league. And I just think he's a really underrated player. Chris Kreider, kind of the same way. I think for years, people kept talking about a guy with all the physical tools, the size, the strength, but yet never quite took it to the next level. I think we're seeing the next level right now, and his role.
And you're talking about a guy that scored 40 the last couple of years,
right?
You know, and I mean his number, what he did just in the final game in Carolina, where he gets the natural hat trick to keep it from going to Game 7. While we were on the air, by the way, where I clearly jinxed the Carolina Hurricanes by anointing them into a Game 7 here at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, and remember that that was a show we had with our playoff consultant Vinny joining us, and we both had the Rangers winning that series, so that was a good win. We should give him credit. We were talking earlier about the Edmonton series. He had the Oilers, I had the Canucks, so he's a perfect 12-0 right now on playoff series predictions. I have to settle for 11-1 heading into this.
And we disagree on this series. I picked the Panthers in the Athletic, and I do think the Panthers are going to win this series. The blue line for the Rangers hasn't been as electric. Like Jacob Trouba is struggling. There was a couple guys there that haven't been nearly as good. And just being around Florida a lot here the last couple of weeks, I have just such an appreciation for Alexander Barkov. We're still waiting for that big Matthew Tkachuk moment. He spoiled us last year. I mean, he is tied for their lead in playoff points right now, but he just hasn't. Actually, he's not even tied. He is leading them with 14 points in 11 games. But he just hasn't had that big Matthew Tkachuk moment that we saw last postseason, where he was just had heroic after heroic. So I'm waiting for that at some point. I think that his love of this building and his his flair for the dramatic is going to bring out the best of him this series. I love what I see from Verhaeghe, Anton Lundell, Gus Forsling. These guys are just totally elevating their game and becoming, in Lundell's case, an absolute stud. They call him Baby Barkov. Forsling, most underrated defenseman, I think, in the league. His analytics are off the absolute charts. You watch him play, he does everything smooth. I just think that they're a really, really quality team. And so it really is going to come down to, I think, Bobrovsky versus Shesterkin. We didn't mention Panarin, by the way. I did a real big story today in the Athletic on back in 5 years ago when Dale Talon, the then Panthers GM, tried to sign both Panarin and Bobrovsky together in one fell swoop. Obviously, Panarin chose the big bright lights here of New York City, but they signed Bobrovsky. He was the priority. They signed him to a 7-year deal at $10 million per. He struggles right out of the gate, struggles, but nobody's complaining about that contract anymore, Anthony, after getting him to the Stanley Cup final last year, getting a Vezina nomination this year, and being excellent so far in the playoffs. So this is going to be a really good series.
Yeah, when you look at his career, it's really remarkable the ups and downs that he's had throughout that career. And you mentioned the contract. It was a year ago, everybody was talking about that might be the worst contract in the NHL. He loses the starting job heading down the stretch in the regular season, didn't have the starting job into the postseason, and then all of a sudden caught fire. And now all of a sudden this year he looked like the Bobrovsky of 10 years ago, was it, when he was in Columbus and had that unbelievable season? It's what he's had in between has been significant. I just think you're going to see a series that should be a lot of fun to watch. It's going to be fast-paced. When these teams played during the season, every night it was like a 35 to 33 shots kind of night. They were all 1-goal games, there was one exception where an empty netter made it a 2-goal margin, but they were all tight to the finish. They were all kind of wide open style, a lot of chances. And I think if that's the way this series is played, the Rangers will win the series. If Florida can continue to play the kind of lockdown style they've played during the postseason, they'd have a chance. But I think you're going to see a lot more 4-3 than 2-1 games in this series.
Yeah, I agree. Different than the Boston series that was tight throughout. I'm just looking forward to seeing how Ekblad and Forsling do against, they had a steady diet of Kucherov, steady diet of Pastrnak. Let's see how they do against these stars here at New York City. I am a Forsling fan, analytics darling. And speaking of analytics, Matt Sells, the Wild assistant general manager, will be coming up. But first, here's a word from some of our sponsors.
Let me tell you about my experience with Aquarius Home Services. For ensuring worry-free water to handling all my plumbing and electrical needs, they've truly made a big difference in my life. And as the summer heat approaches, their dedication to keeping my AC running smoothly brings me peace of mind. But what sets Aquarius apart is their commitment to being a local family-owned business. This means they prioritize their customers and employees above all else. With Aquarius, you can expect transparency, upfront pricing, and a genuine respect for your home and your time. I wholeheartedly recommend Aquarius Home Services. They've earned their stellar reputation, and you can easily reach them at AquariusHomeservices.com. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. Aquarius believes earning the right to be recommended. That's why I recommend them every single week on this show.
Don't wait. Save smarter with a 5.10% annual percentage yield 13-month certificate from Royal Credit Union. Royal's 5.10% 13-month certificate has no minimum opening balance and a locked-in rate for a guaranteed return on your investment. Open a 5.10% 13-month certificate at any Royal office or online at rcu.org/certificate510. Early withdrawal penalties could reduce earnings and principal. APY accurate as of 3/1/24. Insured by NCUA.
Hey, this is Russo for Livea Weight Control Centers. Now is the time to get a jump on summer the Livea way. Join Livea today and get your first 8 weeks free. In those first 8 weeks, by following Livea's nutrition plan and with the help of their expert team of registered dietitians and nutritionists, you can lose up to 20 pounds or more. Imagine how much better you'll feel, not to mention how much better your summer clothes will fit. Join Livea today and you'll also receive a complimentary in-body scan. Take it from me, I joined at Christmas and I've lost more than 40 pounds. I've been on the road for 2 weeks covering the playoffs. I have 6 more weeks on the road and things are going perfectly. I travel with my food, I do weekly check-ins with their dietitians, and anytime I need anything, I just know that they're a phone call away. I'm well on my way to my weight loss goal. So join Livea today and get your first 8 weeks of Livea's nutrition plan free. Visit Livea.com, that's Livea.com, or call 855-GO-LIVEA. Make sure to let them know that Russo sent you and they'll get you all set up. Plus, Livea's medical weight loss is now offering GLP-1 medication starting at just $299 per month. Quiet the food noise and see accelerated results by summer. Visit Livea.com or call 855-GO-LIVEA. Get a jump on summer the Livea way.
Back here, worst seats in the house, Michael Russo, Anthony LaPanta, and man, it's the middle of the offseason, and Matt Sells is in his office, hard at work already. Newest assistant general manager of the Wild, Bill Guerin, did something that a lot of teams have done, is he's made internal promotions, but has now 3 assistant general managers. One in Matt's right-hand man, and Michael Murray, then Chris Kelleher, who's in charge of player personnel and scouting, and Matt, longtime director of analytics, for the Minnesota Wild, last year the vice president of hockey strategy, and now assistant general manager. Congratulations, Matt, and just how exciting of a time is this for you, and especially your family, who I saw wearing Sells jerseys at the Global Games many, many months ago in Sweden.
Yeah, thanks. It's neat, great opportunity, really cool. Ted and Wendy, they are big Wild fans. They live back in Saskatchewan, but they're not afraid to travel. I know my dad got some TV time when we were up in Edmonton, and you can usually see them there. They make it down to the Twin Cities. They're in St. Paul and typically wearing Sells jerseys, although I can't play I don't know. Can I say Dan? Am I allowed to say Dan?
Yeah, of course.
You can say whatever you want.
Yeah.
Oh.
Matt,
Michael always just has to ask for retroactively deleting his cuss words anyway, so Brandon can take care of you.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, perfect.
Yeah. Matt, let me ask you, I'm always fascinated by people's starts and how they get into the business, because everybody has a different path. Bill Guerin didn't grow up looking at analytics and scouting and things like that. He grew up by being an incredible hockey player. There have been some people that wind up in management positions that started selling tickets. In fact, Wild assistant general manager back in the old days, Brent Flair, was an account executive making minimum wage for the Florida Panthers once upon a time. People in PR work their way up. You had a really fascinating start, starting with Hockey Canada. Bring people up on how you got to this point in your career.
Yeah, I'd probably even take it a step further back. My real start was in Penticton, BC, with the Bees, just as a volunteer coach. showed up and was able to connect with Fred Harbinson, longtime coach and GM there, that I want to help, and started cutting up video for them. Worked my way up the coaching ladder a bit, and then what you're referencing is a move to Calgary with my wife, and I started with Hockey Canada. Same kind of idea. I did a lot of when I first moved to Calgary. I did a lot of work just doing on ice skill development with like youth hockey programs in the Calgary area through Hockey Canada. And then I would help out because I had a little coaching background, a little video background. I would help in the preparation for some of the various tournaments that Hockey Canada had, just helping coaches cut up video. My big break would be the fall of 2013. Hockey Canada got some grant money from the Canadian government to help them prepare for the 2014 Sochi Olympics. And my break was because they didn't get this grant money until October. Everyone who was any good in hockey already had a job because junior hockey, pro hockey seasons were already started, and I was who was available to do the work. So I got in there, and really what I was doing was because it was NHL players, NHL coaches, the coaches didn't have a ton of prep time for the Olympics. So I was hired, I was brought in to just dive into every other federation and just what systems do they run? How do their coaches use various tactics? What do we know about some of the players on these various national teams? And basically, we put together a pretty comprehensive pre-scout package so that when the coaches hopped on the flight to Sochi, they were handed tablets that just had a pretty comprehensive pre-scout of every team. And then I guess the numbers part of that was, so this is 2013. We're in the real infancy, early stages of advanced statistics in hockey. And really, we were just kind of talking internally, Scott Salmon, Andrew Brewer, and myself at Hockey Canada, and saying like, hey, advanced stats, like, does this help us? Can this give us some sort of advantage? And I was kind of curious myself. So really, I just started to dive into the numbers, what numbers there were available. And for whatever reason, they really spoke to me, and it was interesting, I guess, is the biggest thing. And I found over the next couple of years at Hockey Canada that I had a bit of a knack for being able to turn statistical language into the language that coaches and general managers speak, and just trying to make it easy and digestible. And that was kind of that would be my start, or that was kind of my big break.
When you go back to the video study, I've always felt like that's a way that you don't realize how much you don't know about a game until you start to study video. And when you start to study the subtle differences between how this team or this player does this compared to this player or team, did you find that the more you studied, the more you realized how much there was to learn about the game of hockey? Yeah,
I mean, growing up in Canada, everybody thinks that they know everything about hockey. So for me, working in Penticton and then with the national team in Canada, I was always blown away by the coaches and just the detail and what they could take out of a period that we just played or rewatching a game through video. So I learn a lot by watching or by cutting up video. I learned the most by just shutting up and listening to smart coaches go back and forth. And that I was so lucky with Team Canada, just the quality of coaches that came through the U18, U20, and then the top team, the pro guys. It's pretty incredible. It's it's fun to walk around the bowels of a NHL rink, because most nights there's somebody that I worked with in the past. It's neat.
Matt, obviously your job changed in early December when Chris left the organization. How did things change this year in terms of, your expanded roles, where now suddenly you are, negotiating contracts and sort of running the day-to-day operations of the team? And how much did that sort of lead you to this spot now, where you are going to be, pretty much the chief contract negotiator of this organization?
Yeah, difficult situation. You just sort of, you have to figure it out, right? The league moves on. You continue to play games. Players need to be called up. They need to be sent down. It just, somebody had to step in and fill the void. Chris and I worked incredibly closely for every year that I've been here. He was an incredible. He's amazing at his job. I just learned a lot. Again, I just would kind of pay attention to what he's doing and just mimic him. Basically, is what I'm trying to do now. The legal background helps too, right? So I was, after I left Hockey Canada, I practiced law and then came here. So a lot of those concepts work or apply to the new expanded role.
What is your negotiating style? I mean, everybody has a different type, and you're going to be talking to a lot of important agents coming up, trying to get some deals done. Namely Stephen Bartlett and Brock Faber's agent. I should say Brian's actually the lead agent on that. I should say Brian Bartlett. That's Stephen's brother.
Yeah, I mean,
Scott's the other brother. It's the whole family dynamic there at the Bartletts.
It's a family business. My style is straightforward, I guess, would be the easiest way to do it. Both parties are always doing the research. So, you find comps that work for you, but also understand what the comps are that the other side are going to be using. And, I think it comes from the top. Bill Guerin's a deal maker. He's a fair deal guy. He's not trying to pull a fast one on any agents or other GMs. You want to be able to get deals done, right? Ultimately, if you're negotiating with a player's agent, you're negotiating because you like the player. Hopefully they like being with your team. So there's common ground there. Find the common ground and work towards a positive solution.
One of the other obvious changes that you had to deal with this year was the coaching change. And I know that when you were working with Dean and his staff, when Dean was in charge, one of the things he always said to me when we talk about the analytics part of the game was, he said the beauty of Matt is that he brings hockey knowledge plus analytics. And you made the comment earlier about the fact that you had a knack for being able to look at the numbers, look at the analytics, look at the video, but then put it into words and terminology that made sense to coaches and GMs. And the way Dean termed it was always that you weren't just a normal numbers guy, you were a numbers guy that also had hockey knowledge. How much did that change when John Hynes took over? Did he lean on your information the same way? Did the daily communication change at all?
I mean, the daily communication changed in the sense that I had new responsibilities as well. So that was kind of an added element to it. Yeah, as far as working with coaches, still work very closely, even post coaching change. Everyone's got a little bit different style. There's a feeling out process too, where I had never met John Hynes before he showed up, whereas I had 4 years with Dean, right? So that's going to be a different dynamic as well. But John, he has similar characteristics to most coaches, most successful coaches, they want to learn. They want to get better. If you have information that can help them do their job, they're all for it. So he's really into it. He likes new ideas. He likes to try new things. So it's been a productive relationship.
One of the things, I had a chance to watch it firsthand on one of our trips, where the way Dean's staff would break down the night before his game, they would start often with you saying, here's what we saw, but did anything jump out from you analytically that we should have seen in that game? Anybody that was better than we might have expected? Anybody that their numbers might have looked different than the eye test? And I always found that interesting, because they had to assume that your eye test was the same as their eye test to know that if the numbers were going to tell them something differently than what it appeared.
Yeah, so that's what you kind of used good terminology there. I don't, when I step into those types of meetings, I don't use the eye test. I try to take a step back, because look, it's hot on the bench and post game. Like you're real, coaches are in it with the players. It's an intense environment, and yeah, coaches can be upset about certain things that happen in a game. What I like to be able to do, and what most coaches that I've worked with over the years have enjoyed is I can help them take kind of a step back from the heat of battle and just say, okay, let's just look statistically. Here's what happened. Because oftentimes, let's just talk about something you hear coaches talk about a lot, or you see it when you're watching a game, is something like giveaways, right? So a player has a puck, he passes it to the other team, right? That if it leads to a goal against or a good chance against, that gets seared into a coach's brain. Like, what a mistake that just was. So now they have that in their head, and sometimes they can't get it out. So then they'll come talk to me the next day and they'll be like, well, how about player X? He was just giving the puck away all night. That's the beauty of numbers. I can go back to them and say, you know what? That was his only giveaway at the night. It was a bad one, but it only happened once. So that's that I think coaches really like is it's so, the numbers are just so cold. Like they don't have any feelings. You can't hurt them. It's just data, right? So I think people like that, to just be able to take a step back and evaluate it without any real emotion, right?
Matt, now that you have all these other responsibilities with your new title and your new promotion and all that, will there be an expanded analytics department, or are you going to continue have to be sort of a jack of all trades and 1 second negotiate with an agent, but then run downstairs and talk to the coaches?
Yeah. No, it's a lot of work. And I think that was a big part of how we've restructured things across the front office. Is I'm not stepping into the role as it was previously set up. We've carved out some of the responsibilities, and that's where Chris Kelleher and Mike Murray and Matt Hendricks are gonna take on more responsibility as well, as far as the day-to-day management of the hockey teams, if we're talking both NHL and AHL. So yeah, we're always looking for new and qualified people to help us take what we're doing, Danny Kaplan and I, to the next level.
Everybody in every sport, and I'm fascinated by the analytics and advanced stats, because everybody's always looking for that way to more properly evaluate a player's performance. And hockey, I've always felt, was one of the more challenging, because you're playing to 3. And so if the guy scores a goal, it's a bigger deal than, let's say, a guy makes a basket in an NBA game, or a guy even gets a base hit in a baseball game. And because it's such a team game, everybody's looking for that perfect way to measure what a guy's performance was. If it didn't lead directly to a goal, does it matter? And obviously it does. But as you study the numbers, I think fans are always intrigued by what is the number that if you could specify, like, this is the best way I evaluate a player's performance on a nightly basis. Is there one that you really lean on to say, this is the one that most accurately judges what a guy brought in terms of value to his team that night, regardless of whether or not pucks wound up in the net or not?
Oh, yeah, that's tricky, but you're bang on, right? Goals are relatively infrequent in hockey games. So if you're just using that as your sole form of analysis, you're missing a lot of the nuance that goes into the game. And yeah, you can look at goals and they tell the story of what happened, but they don't always tell the story of what's going to happen next, right? That's where you need that broader statistical view of things, where you can look and say, if players do these things consistently well, it will lead to goals in the future. I think that's probably the biggest thing that advanced stats has brought to the world of hockey is more forward thinking about what's going to happen next, instead of just, looking at something like a plus minus that just says, okay, who's out there for a goal, right? It doesn't really tell you season to season what's going to happen, or really even in season, right? Do I have one? There's a lot of work out there. We don't deal in like a single number game score type of stat. We like to look at broader categories, and we have a bunch of different things that on various sites that we have that we can look at to help us tell the story about how a player performs. So I never try to give sweeping judgments on a player's game. It's really, you look at different segments of a game, or different areas of a player's game, and we can use stats to say, okay, he did these sorts of things well, this area not so well, right? It's there's a lot to it.
Matt, how has player and puck tracking data really changed things also, or are there any insights that you can get from that data? Because I feel like at least what's presented to us as media on the Edge site is really in its infancy. Not a lot there, no shot assists, like that's the type of stuff that I'd love to eventually. Do you guys do different types of models and tracking, and regardless, how has that sort of, now that we have knowledge of burst, speed bursts and shot velocities and things like that, how does that help you?
It helps in so many different ways. It helps you evaluate your game on a team level, right? Because there's just more accuracy in the information that you have. The amount of information has just grown exponentially with that player and puck tracking data. So it's a huge change. But I mean, even something as simple as what you mentioned about speed bursts and skating. Now we have so much more information. So now our scouts are pretty dialed in on, skating as a skill with people. But with this sort of advanced data, we can tell, is a player's speed trending the wrong direction, or sometimes it is a scout remembering what a player used to be as far as what he is as a skater, right? So it's amazing, and we're pulling new insights out of it all the time.
I'm also surprised that, and I think fans might not realize how much you use the analytics side and the advanced statistics when you start to preview an opponent and start to prepare a game plan. The number of times that we'd walk into a pre-game meeting with John Hines and he'd say, this team is third in the league in chances off the rush, or this team they do the best job at this. They're dangerous on the power play at getting shots from here. That there's so much more to that, I think, than fans realize. It isn't just, hey, this guy, he only has 4 goals, but his expected goals for is 75%. Well, that you're talking about an individual analysis, but when it actually comes to game planning, you guys use that quite a bit.
It's kind of about the capacity that a person or a coaching staff has to collect information, right? That's where stats are great on a team level, because a coach can go back and he can watch a team's previous 5 games. That takes a lot of time, right? And there's 82 games in a regular season, and not a lot of time between games. So you can go through and you can mark every time you see an interesting forecheck or whatever you're looking for, right? But now you're relying on a lot of time and a lot of watching video, and then are you seeing, kind of like I talked about before with the one big giveaway that leads to a scoring chance. Now you see a team forecheck and they turn it into a scoring chance, and you're like, oh wow, this is a great forechecking team. Well, was that the only time they've done it in the last 3 or 4 games? So that's where stats can give you a little bit more information about just kind of style of play. What do teams do well? And again, it's not about any sort of narrative or story that I'm trying to tell. It's just data. Like, we're looking at this. Okay, in these situations, this team does this on a regular basis, right? So it's, again, you're talking about the coaching staff. They like it. It helps them do their job, right?
Matt, a couple more for you, and then we'll let you go. We've already kept you over than what we told you. I wanted to get back to contract negotiations. A huge topic right now lately in the NHL is the fact of the benefit that if you are a team based in Florida and Tennessee and Washington and Texas and Nevada, just the benefit of being in a no state income tax, and how that is just, if you look at those teams, they are the most successful teams in the last couple of years. I sat down with Bill Zito for a story I'm doing on Sam Reinhart the other day, and he made it very, very clear to me that, if Sam Reinhart's going to stay, he's going to have to basically look at something like that, at taking a haircut based on the fact that his salary is still going to be more in other places. How much of a handicap is that for other teams and other markets? And do you think that the league eventually needs to look at some sort of, tax to essentially even up the playing field for the other 24 or 5 teams that don't have that benefit?
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't thought of it from a league perspective. I think that it definitely would play into it if you were kind of in like a unrestricted free agent kind of battle, right? You're negotiating, and it's July 1. We're trying to get a player that a team in Florida is trying to get. Yeah, that the player is likely taking that into consideration. I think it's an advantage for those teams, but the weather's an advantage too, right? How fun some people think certain cities are is an advantage too. So I don't know that it's as big of an advantage as some people make it seem. People like playing in California. They've got very high taxes. Toronto doesn't have trouble keeping their guys, and they've got taxes. New York City's got fairly high taxes, and they keep their guys. So I think it's probably a little bit overblown. Mm-hmm. Guys like different places for different reasons, right?
Without a doubt. One of the along those same lines, one of the things that I know where you have also been involved with the data analysis has been assigning a value when it comes to free agent signings, and to start to say that, hey, this player at this price is a worthwhile contract. Michael and I have talked a lot about the Wild roster and the way it's set up right now, and I know that a lot of fans were talking about some of the extensions that were signed last year, assigning value to, say, a guy that's on your third or fourth line. How much do they lean on your data with also then figuring out what that's worth when it comes to underneath $87 million of a cap? A guy who scores 40 points and brings this and this and this is worth X number of millions of dollars, where a guy that scores 50 points but doesn't do this is worth this. How much do they lean on you, and how involved are you with those kind of assessment values?
Yeah, I mentioned it before how closely Chris and I used to work on those sorts of things, and we were always looking for those sort of sweet spots where statistically what a play, we can put a dollar value, I guess, on what players bring to teams, and there are certain things that players can do that we think inflate their value past a point where we can find some sort of common ground, right? So that's really what we're trying to find, is the area where statistically and the impact that a player is having on his team, on our team, isn't too out of sync with what they're being paid.
Lastly for you, Matt, actually I have a two-parter for you that are on totally different things. First of all, how much are you looking forward to never having to hear the words $14.7 million in dead money again? This year it's going to be a little more with Marco Rossi having a 425 overage and then potentially another 212,500 for the all-rookie team. Yeah. But just how much are you looking forward to that day ending? And just, it's a real handcuff. It's just got to be to that point where it's going to be a weight off this organization.
Yeah, we're spending less on our team than everybody else is, and that's just a fact. It'll be a unique opportunity for us to be able to have the full salary cap at our disposal come next season. We made the decisions that we made when we made them, and it gave us the cost certainty. And yeah, we've just it's made it tougher, but we've been able to put competitive teams together, and our plan is to have another competitive team. Hopefully better, not hopefully, it'll be better than the one that we just had, and then be ready to take the next step the year after.
And Matt, I have one final question for you. As you study the analytics, and you used the term earlier about saying that we're trying to predict what's going to happen in the future by studying these numbers, going deeper than just goals. So based on that, which Wild player this season should we expect more from next year based on their analytics that said they played better than what the goals and assists might have shown this season?
I'm not going to answer that because I probably have to negotiate with their agent at some point. They'll be sure to bring that up. But no, you know what? It was a difficult season for us across the board. But I would expect Jared Spurgeon to have a much better season next year than he had last year. Yeah, that's a safe one for me. Cop out. That's a cop out. But
right.
Matt, I appreciate it. Just one last one for you. A lot of young people listen to this podcast, and they all have aspirations to one day sit in your seat. What's the biggest advice that you give to young kids that have to crack into an organization? I mean, you know how hard it is to get that first foot in the door. Yeah. What's your biggest source of advice of the many young people that reach out to you?
Yeah, I almost feel bad when I say it, but it's the truth. This is the NHL. It's not just the NHL for players. It's the NHL for analysts. It's the NHL for scouts, for management people. Like, this is the highest level, right? There are many levels of hockey below this one. So if you really want to break into this game, the NHL's not where you start. Mm-hmm. I guess that's my biggest piece of advice is, I mean, I don't, I started in Penticton. I worked for 2 years there and didn't make any money doing it. Right. I had to have a job on the side, and that's where I started. And it was 7 or 8 years later, and I made it to the NHL. Like it's hard. It's a climb. There's no shortcuts. It's if you're passionate about it and you're willing to put in the work, then then you might have the opportunity. I mean, we'd have to have a whole other podcast to go through the number of times I got lucky to get where I am. Like that played a huge, there's nothing special about me other than I have pretty fantastic luck too. When I look back at my career and how I got to this point, it's a lot of support from family and friends and a lot of good fortune too. So it's hard, but it's worth it.
Absolutely. And I could talk about this subject forever, but I will not make you have to listen to it, but I will bother Anthony with this subject when we come back from this break. Matt, congratulations on the promotion. I'm sure in a lot of ways it doesn't feel like anything's changed other than the fancy new title on your door and business cards and the 1,000 text messages I'm sure you got the other day. But your job continues as Bill Guerin's right-hand man with this Minnesota Wild team. Congratulations.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thanks.
Yep, you bet. Thanks, Matt.
That is Matt Sells, the Wild assistant general manager, one of three. And also Matt Hendricks, as Matt mentioned, also got a promotion to Iowa Wild general manager. We'll be back right after these messages.
Spring has arrived at Twill, and we are preparing for summer as well. And I got to tell you, not only is it a great place to buy graduation gifts for the man in your life, stuff for yourself, it's also a great place. I'm traveling a lot right now covering the Timberwolves. I'm on the road. I'm packing things into a tight suitcase. And what I really notice about the quality of the stuff I get at Twill is that it doesn't wrinkle. It comes out of the suitcase looking good. I tell you what I'm wearing a lot right now, the Brax pants, Johnny O shirts, Peter Millar shirts. They're just made well. So I highly recommend going to Twill in the Edina Galleria. Also sign up for their email alerts at twillmn.com. They will not spam you. They just want you to know when they're going to have a specific event. A lot of the stuff I bought from Twill, I bought at like a buy 2 or buy 3 and get 1 free thing. I have all the dress shirts I need the rest of my life. I bought one time at a Stenstrom's event. So I highly recommend it. Twill in the Edina Galleria. Tell Scott Dayton we sent you and check out twillmn.com.
Hey everyone, attorney Jerry Bosch here with Bosch Law Firm and WorkCompExperts.com. For almost 30 years, we've represented Minnesotans just like you all over the great state of Minnesota to guarantee they've been treated fairly and with respect when they've suffered a work-related injury. A work injury can change your life in an instant. You need someone on your side who can help you focus on getting back on your feet and getting paid while you do. You may be entitled to medical benefits, wage loss benefits, job placement, retraining, and payment for permanent disability. To make sure you are being paid all the work comp benefits you're entitled to, please call the attorneys at Bosch Law Firm. The call is always free, and there's never a fee unless we recover benefits on your behalf. Call 651-333-8300, Bosch Law Firm, or visit us at WorkCompExperts.com.
I'm so excited to have Fellers Ranch as a part of this show, and part of it is just because I believe in their product, and I'm thrilled that we're a little more free to talk about it. I think I've mentioned them on earlier shows before they were a part of things here, but it's a locally owned cattle ranch in southern Minnesota. These are local farmers that have committed themselves to creating the best steaks in the state, and they've done it. It's unbelievable, the marbling that you'll find in these steaks. I recommend them to people anytime. There's a couple local restaurants where you can get them, and I say it might not be on the menu. Just ask them what they have from Fellers. But now if you go to fellersranch.com, they'll deliver it right to your house. I think their truck is in town a couple days a week, and even if it's another day, they'll figure out a way to get it to you. You won't be disappointed by the cuts of meat. They won't even release their steaks unless they're at a marbling level that is so far beyond what USDA Prime mandates as a minimum. Check them out. Go to fellersranch.com. Try the ribeyes. If you can get your hands on the Denver cuts, try those. The fillets have been terrific. I literally have not been disappointed with any of the steaks I've gotten. Check it out, fellersranch.com.
Anthony, the one subject that he brought up at the end, we've discussed this before, and I think it's an important thing for all young people in today's day and age to realize is that you don't just wake up and get to, be the Minnesota Vikings and the Minnesota Wild announcer. You don't wake up and just cover the Minnesota Wild. You don't wake up and become assistant GM of a team. It takes hard work. And I get the impression that a lot of young people just think that they should wake up one day and be CEO. But this isn't just our generation that had to, like you working at cable access forever and me covering high schools for freaking ever. It takes a while, and you have to be willing to uproot your life, work for no money. I mean, there are great success stories of the NHL vice presidents that were freaking mascots for minor league baseball teams. It takes a while, and you have to be willing to make no money, work your ass off, and eventually you wind up in that. Now to Matt's point, it takes luck. You have to make the right decisions. You have to have the right people that are supporting you, and things like that. But there's no doubt that you have to work to get to where you want to be to have success.
Yeah, I think he said about three things that really jumped out at me. And one was, everybody has fortune. There's no question. He was in the right place at the right time when Hockey Canada needed somebody and most of the other people already had jobs. But if he doesn't go in there prepared for it, works his tail off and is good at it, it doesn't lead to anything. And so good fortune is certainly a part of it, but that doesn't get you a career. It might get you an opportunity somewhere. It might get somebody to listen to you sooner than they would have otherwise listened to you. But I think his point where he just said, this is the NHL, not just for players, but for everybody else. And I think sometimes people lose sight of that. And I've talked to a couple of groups lately that, and I don't mean to make this sound more glorious than it is, but the truth of the matter is there are 32 guys that have my job. There are 32 TV play-by-play guys in the NHL. For every one of us, and even if you include the radio guys, so double it and say there's 64. For every two of us, there are 25 players. I mean, it's a narrower pyramid to get to the NHL doing what I do than it is for a guy that's playing in theory. And sometimes I think people lose sight of that, and then on top of it, the guys who a lot of the guys who are in my line of work, they keep their jobs for 25 or 30 years. So it isn't like a roster's turning over. It's incredibly hard to get to that point. And I think sometimes that, I don't know why right now, but I think young people do just assume that, well, when I get out of college, I'm not interested in going to cover high school hockey. I want to cover NHL hockey. And I think about my own career. I started in the fall of 1990 volunteering for any public access channel that would take me. And from that point to the time that I got now I had some other opportunities along the way that were good and had a chance to work in Major League Baseball and Division I hockey, but I got offered the Minnesota Wild job in 2012. That was 22 years into my career before I was doing NHL play-by-play. And now I don't think people realize, like, am I willing to do this for 22 years with no guarantee that at some point I'm going to be in the NHL? I just don't think I don't think sometimes that's acknowledged. So good for Matt. He's achieved a lot. And I do think it is a topic worth a longer discussion at another time. And I've loved every minute of my path along the way. Don't get me wrong. I've loved my career. I wouldn't do anything differently, but boy, when you really look back at it now and you say 22 years that I called games before I did play-by-play in the National Hockey League, that's significant.
Great points, Anthony. I just cannot agree more, and I think it's a good points by Matt. And I think this transcends just being getting yourself into hockey. I think this is just in life in general. Anthony, first segment, we didn't talk at all about the Stars Oilers series, really. As you mentioned, in a lot of ways, maybe lucky to get past Vancouver. This Dallas team is an absolute juggernaut. I think Roope Hintz's health will really be a big key for Dallas here. Obviously, they've gotten some time here to get some rest and things like that. But this is going to be a heck of a series. But Dallas right now just looks like, a real tough challenge for the Oilers.
I think Dallas is the most complete team in the NHL. The defensive core was a strength already, and obviously the addition at the trade deadline of Chris Tanev helped solidify that. I think up front they're so much deeper than Edmonton, and Edmonton, they're dangerous just because of the superstar power. But I think when you look at how many different places this Dallas team can hurt you, and from how many different people they get scoring. I was amazed late in their series in the second round. All of a sudden, Joe Pavelski scores, and they say it's the first goal of the playoffs.
Yeah.
I thought, here's this guy, like, he's been a great player for them, and they've advanced to this point without him scoring a goal. It just gives you an idea of when you've got that many guys that can score and that many lines that can score, you don't even really notice when a guy's in a slump.
Well, Wyatt Johnston is it's unbelievable watching what this guy is doing right now at his age, Anthony. And this is no fluke anymore. This is every single game. He has been absolutely monster for them. Obviously, Jay Robertson's playing well. Matt Duchene giving him incredible value. They have guys slotted in the right position on the blue line. Heiskanen's been all world. Suter is in the perfect spot next to Lundqvist right now at this stage in his career. Then Ottinger playing great.
I think Dallas is going to be a tough out in this series. The only way that I see Edmonton staying in this is if it becomes a special teams series and they can beat you single-handedly with a power play. And we'll see, but we've also seen Pete DeBoer's a master at that, at playing those games and making sure that it doesn't turn into a penalty fest and a lot of power play opportunities. So I like Dallas in this series. I'll take Dallas in 6. I think they're the best team in the West.
I picked Dallas in 5, and which also is the over/under on the numbered dives they take this series. So there you go. So, Anthony, real fun show. Thanks to Matt Sells for joining. Thanks to Brandon, who's got a job ahead of him today. With some internet issues that Brandon's going to have to deal with in trying to edit this program. But thanks, Anthony, for joining, and really just a fun show. It was nice getting Matt on and hearing a little bit more about his job. Stay tuned. We're going to be having some live shows here in June and July, so stay tuned to the dates and the sites of that. And thanks for joining us today from our Aquarius Home Services studio on location. Thanks to our sponsors, Aquarius Home Services, your local authorized dealer for Connecticut water treatment systems, Royal Credit Union, Livia Weight Control Centers, Twill and Edina Galleria, Bosch Law Firm, and Feller's Ranch. Thanks, Anthony.
You bet. Thank you.
So much coming out, there's nothing going in. I know that you feel like you're never gonna win. Oh, but the world won't forgive